On the beaches of Peru, a fisherman goes out on his boat and throws his net. Suddenly, the net is pulled down by something in the water and the man falls along. He decides to swim down to retrieve the net, which is stuck on a bunch of rocks. However, a huge swarm of fish begins to surround him and then kill him. In Scotland, biologist Charlie is on a research mission sent by the Institute of Marine Biology in Germany. Her co-worker Rahim sends her instructions to map a specific section of the seabed using AUVs, which are autonomous underwater vehicles. At that moment, Charlie sees an alarm on the computer and discovers that one of the AUVs has stopped working, so she goes out on a boat to check on it. It turns out the AUV is stuck in the chains of a buoy, thus Charlie dives underwater to untangle it. As she works, she can't help sensing something strange surrounding her, but she can't see anything. Nervous, she finishes the untangling quickly and resurfaces, only to discover her boat has drifted away from her. Charlie swims as fast as possible and gets back to it just in time. Sometime later, Charlie receives co-workers Jess and Thomas, who will help her get the AUV operational again. Thomas is surprised to find burned parts inside, but Charlie swears that she doesn't know how it happened. The duo leaves as soon as the repairs are done, and now Charlie feels very lonely, so she goes to a pub where she meets fisherman Douglas, and they end up spending the night together. The next morning, Charlie takes Douglas with her to launch the repaired AUV. It goes well, but before they leave, Douglas notices something weird floating in the water. Charlie grabs it and sets it on fire as she explains it's methane hydrate, which is released by algae and then freezes. Sometimes a few pieces break free and float to the surface. However, there are tons of them surrounding them now, which isn't normal. Charlie records it all and later sends it to the Institute for Professor Lehman and her other co-workers to analyze. Lehman asks Charlie to investigate if this is happening anywhere else in the area. Meanwhile, in Canada, Leon and a co-worker of the Vancouver Marine Institute discover a dead orca at the beach with strange bruises on its body that could only be made by humans. Calculating the direction it came from, the duo visits the local fishermen at the cove and learns that the orca attacked their boat, which isn't normal behavior. The fishermen had no choice but to fight back to save their own lives. Later, Leon keeps an eye on the whale tracker and worries because the migrating whales haven't shown up at the usual time, which never happens. This is also causing trouble for local tourism since many people come by just to hire boat rides and watch the whales. Leon's girlfriend Lizzie runs a small boat and worries she may have to sell it if the whales don't arrive soon. The following day, Leon gets very excited when he hears signals indicating the whales have finally shown up. He calls Lizzie to let her know and is surprised to hear that all of them have come at the same time all over the coast. While Lizzie takes some tourists out on her boat, including reporter Alicia, Leon heads out to do his research and is startled when a whale surfaces just to stare at him for a moment before leaving. Then Leo discovers multiple orcas advancing toward Lizzie's boat at a great speed, so he immediately goes after them to check what's happening. At that moment, a whale begins performing a few flips for the tourists, only to suddenly land directly on the boat and break it in two. The duo visits the local fishermen at the cove and learns that the orca attacked their boat, which isn't normal behavior. The fishermen had no choice but to fight back to save their own lives. Later, Leon keeps an eye on the whale tracker and worries because the migrating whales haven't shown up at the usual time, which never happens. This is also causing trouble for local tourism since many people come by just to hire boat rides and watch the whales. Leon's girlfriend Lizzie runs a small boat and worries she may have to sell it if the whales don't arrive soon. The following day, Leon gets very excited when he hears signals indicating the whales have finally shown up. He calls Lizzie to let her know and is surprised to hear that all of them have come at the same time all over the coast. While Lizzie takes some tourists out on her boat, including reporter Alicia, Leon heads out to do his research and is startled when a whale surfaces just to stare at him for a moment before leaving. Then Leo discovers multiple orcas advancing toward Lizzie's boat at a great speed, so he immediately goes after them to check what's happening. At that moment, a whale begins performing a few flips for the tourists, only to suddenly land directly on the boat and break it in two. People fall into the water and the orcas arrive to start feeding on them. Leon calls for help before bringing as many people as possible into his boat. Alicia manages to get aboard, but Lizzie goes back to save a child. She pushes the little girl onto the boat safely. However, before she can jump in as well, an orca eats her. Meanwhile, in a restaurant in France, a chef is getting the lobsters ready for cooking. He suddenly notices one of them is exuding a weird white liquid, and the lobster even squirts it in his face. Furious, the chef makes two employees take care of it, and the lobster ends up in the garbage disposal. Soon the chef begins to feel unwell and goes outside for fresh air, only to collapse to the ground. Sometime later, one of the employees is sent to the hospital because of fever, black vomit, and diarrhea. Doctors Sophia and Cecile hear about the chef's death, who was found with the same black vomit, and request permission for an autopsy. Cecile worries that this may be something contagious going around the restaurant staff, so she goes to talk to one of the cooks and learns about the lobster incident. Afterward, she goes to check on the other cook that handled the lobster, who has missed work today. Unfortunately, by the time Cecile makes it to the cook's apartment, she's already dead. At that same time in the hospital, the first cook goes through a cardiac arrest, and Sophia with her team try to save him, but sadly he doesn't make it. In the meantime, Leon is trying to deal with his grief when he meets an astrophysicist called Samantha, who compares the sea to space and gives him her card in case he ever needs someone to talk to. Then Leon visits the port offices and is shocked to learn that humpback whales have been attacking ships all over the area. Usually they're only aggressive to protect their babies, but it's not mating season, and only big whales have been seen around. Leon also notices that the ships are covered with way more mussels than normal, so he takes a few for his research. In the Norwegian Sea, Professor Seeger is brought to a charter ship hired by Hovstad Energy, where he meets with his old friends Captain Jasper and Tina, who works as Hovstad's compliance officer. They show him footage of the area where Hovstad is looking for gas and oil, which has been covered with ice worms feeding with frozen methane. They're multiplying at an alarming speed, but when their camera tries to get closer, a strange interference interrupts. Seeger and Tina bring their discovery to Lehman's lab, and she agrees it must be a new species. The really disturbing part is that these worms are going through the ice on the sea floor, even though there isn't anything for them to feed on, as if they were self-destructing. Tina must report this to Hovstad, and Rahim gets annoyed that a company gets a say before they can release new discoveries to the world. Afterward, Seeger and Tina have a meeting with members of Hovstad, who want to know how to solve this quickly so they can keep on digging. Tina convinces they need more samples before they can make a decision, so the board approves another trip. On their way out, Seeger offers Tina to take her home, but he's disappointed to see her boyfriend is already there for her. During their second exploration, the camera reveals that the worms have gotten even bigger. As a test, they activate the ship's drill, but it immediately begins malfunctioning. Suddenly, the ship starts shaking and swaying before something explodes underwater. Sometime later, they bring this issue to Lehman again, and she explains that the drill released the trapped methane and caused the explosion. If the ship had been smaller, it would have been destroyed. From what they can see on the scans, the bacteria mat is also eating its way through the ice, and if they reach the bottom of the seabed, it'll be disastrous for marine life. Since this is getting serious, Tina invites Seeger to come with her to an Energy Council meeting to find out if other scientists have also seen the worms. Back to Charlie, she's doing some work at the pub and sends Jess a birthday message before taking a break with Douglas. Jess is currently with Thomas working on another expedition in a boat, and when Jess sees Charlie's message, she starts recording a video for her. Suddenly, the computers start to malfunction, and weird readings appear on the screens. The ship begins to shake as the sea underneath takes a weird consistency and swallows it down, killing Thomas and Jess. While Rahim and Charlie are devastated to hear the bad news, weird things continue to happen in the sea. In Venice, the locals are shocked to discover that the waters are suddenly full of jellyfish. Meanwhile, Leo shows the mussel samples to Alicia and other scientists at the Vancouver Institute, who are shocked to see the results. These mussels are much bigger than usual, and their rate of reproduction is too fast, so they could be a new species or a mutation. They also notice a white substance coming out of them, so they'll have to test it too. Then Leo asks for permission to do an autopsy on the dead orca, because even if it died from its wounds, its weird behavior needs an explanation. There are no signs of infection and nothing weird in its stomach. However, Leon is shocked to find a strange white clot in the dead orca's brainstem. They think it's most likely a fungus, but they'll have to run even more tests to confirm it. Later, while they analyze the pattern,